Chapter 18. Care to join me in the tub? Scene 1. National City, Jordan's engagement party. The hype and excitement around Jordan's engagement party did nothing to lift Sophie and Ryan's moods. They'd agreed to keep things chill on the plane ride over, putting on fake smiles and acting like everything was all good, even though they were both going through it deep down. Working the room, their laughs felt forced, and their interactions were awkward, as if they couldn't even look at each other without feeling some way. Every time they cracked a joke or said something, it was like they were singing off-key in a messed-up duet. They were like actors delivering their lines with Oscar-worthy conviction, yet beneath the surface, the script of their unresolved conflict lay tucked away in the green room of their hearts, waiting for the final act. Yo, Dante. Ryan approached the groom-to-be. You ready to be tied down forever, my man? Dante laughed, pulling Ryan into a bear hug. I'm more than ready. You better be, babe. Jordan turned to Sophie. I'm so glad you two could make it with your crazy schedules. It means everything to me. We wouldn't have missed it for the world, Jor. You know that. Ryan wrapped an arm around Sophie's shoulders, the motion a bit stiff. Yeah, we're here to celebrate you guys. Even if it means Soph has to put up with my terrible dance moves later. They all laughed at that. Dante, however, shifted uncomfortably under Sophie's scrutinizing look. So Dante, Sophie began, you understand the responsibility of marrying my little sister, right? Because if you ever hurt her, I would never. I love Jordan more than anything. Ryan clapped Dante on the back a little too hard. Relax, man. Sophie's just messing with you, but seriously, you break Jordan's heart and we'll break your legs. Jordan rolled her eyes, tugging Dante closer. Ignore them, babe. They're all bark and no bite. Ryan and Sophie traded a loaded look, their smiles barely concealing the unspoken word they had going on. Knowing that they have done their fair share in breaking each other's hearts. No broken legs yet, though. From across the room, Sophie spotted a well-known face, making her stomach drop. Her mother stood near the buffet table, with her shoulders squared and a poker face. She knew her mother was coming, but the recent troubles in her marriage had slipped her mind. Is that your mom? Ryan followed her eyes, also recognizing the woman from a few pictures. Sophie nodded with a dry and tight throat. Though the checks were larger, she hadn't been sending money to her mother as frequently lately. She hoped that it was enough, even though she was less consistent. Steeling herself, Sophie took Ryan's hand and approached her mother. Hi, Mom. It's nice to see you. I want you to meet someone. This is Ryan, my wife. Catching sight of their joined hands, Diane's face scrunched up in a scowl, her mouth twisted, but she quickly reset to a blank, icy look. Wife? I wasn't aware you had gotten married, Sophia. I've called over the last 2 years and left voicemails to tell you, but you never responded. And I asked Jordan not to say anything until you and I spoke. Ignoring that her daughter tried reaching out, Diane's icy glare turned to Ryan. And what is it that you do? How do you provide for my daughter? Trust Diane to make it all about income and who's bankrolling who, rather than congratulating them. I work as an IT engineer, ma'am. A condescending grin spread across Diane's face as she cocked her head, looking Ryan up and down with a judgy side eye. An engineer? How? Interesting. Yes, Mom. Ryan has a brilliant mind and does really well for herself. Most of all, she makes me happy. I had hoped you would be happy for us. Happy? How can I be happy when you've thrown your life away on this affair? You could have had a respectable husband and a proper family. Instead, you choose this. Her words were painted with self-righteousness. Diane's upbringing in the church had instilled in her a deep-rooted belief that homosexuality was a sin, a stain upon the soul. "It's not an affair." Sophie raised her voice, then lowered it, not wanting to draw attention. "Ryan and I are married, committed to only each other. We're in love whether you like it or not." "Married? Please, you may have a piece of paper, but in the eyes of God, this union is nothing more than an abomination." Ryan wanted to lash out, to defend the woman she loved, but she didn't say anything when she felt a comforting hand on the small of her back. Though they were off-kilter for the most part, she knew this was her wife telling her to stand down. Holding her head high, Sophie faced her mother directly, refusing to back down. "I know that I love this woman with everything that I have, and if that's a sin, then I'll gladly bear that cross. It's just plain wrong. It goes against everything I've taught you, everything the church stands for." "I'm sorry you feel that way, Mom, but I won't apologize for who I am or who I love. If you still can't accept that after all these years, then maybe we should continue doing what we've been doing. You act like I don't exist, and I make sure your lights stay on. How does that sound?" "I am your mother first, Sophia. You stand there holding hands with this girl? I raised you to be a good, God-fearing woman. This is how you repay me? By throwing your money in my face and telling me just to accept your sinful lifestyle? Do you want me to stop sending you checks or what, Mom? Do you not want a roof over your head?" Diane's mouth snapped shut, her eyes widening in surprise. She knew, deep down, that she relied on Sophie's money, that she had come to expect it as her due, but she couldn't bring herself to admit it. Not here, not now. Instead, she spotted a distant relative across the room, a welcome escape from the uncomfortable truth of her daughter's words. Without another word, Diane turned and walked away, leaving Sophie and Ryan standing alone in the middle of the party. Ryan couldn't believe her eyes. Diane's ugliness left her wife with childlike hurt. She tried pulling her in close, wanting to shield her from that kind of pain. "Baby," but Sophie cut her off with a shake of her head. "I need a drink." She turned and walked away towards the open bar. With a sigh, Ryan watched her go and turned back to the party, her eyes sweeping the room until they landed on Diane. The older woman was laughing with a group of relatives, yet she could see the cracks, the way Diane's. Eyes darted nervously toward the bar where Sophie stood. Ryan knew that the older woman was just as broken as her daughter, just too proud to admit it. Sophie leaned against the bar, her fingers tapping impatiently on the bar as she waited for her whiskey neat. She needed something strong to wash away the bitter aftertaste of her mother's rejection. She checked her watch, counting down the minutes until she could make her escape while the bartender poured her drink. Being in the same room as her mother was suffocating. He slid the glass towards her, and she tossed back the liquid in one swift swallow. She left a generous tip, seeing that he had doubled up on the liquor. Turning around, she watched her sister and her fiancé goofing around on the dance floor. They were the picture of newly engaged bliss, full of carefree love. Jordan spun away from Dante, giggling at something he whispered in her ear, and Sophie felt envious. Their happiness was different from the tenseness that had been stewing between her and Ryan for a while now. Speaking of Ryan, Sophie glanced over to find her wife also watching the happy couple with a longing expression. She recognized that look. It was the one she wore when she tried to keep her emotions in check, bottling them up until they threatened to spill over. Yes, having Ryan by her side during the showdown with her mother had been the comfort and support that she needed. However, seeing Jordan and Dante's love on full display only served to highlight the rifts in their own marriage. Though there was no shortage of physical intimacy between them, still lately, it felt like sex was a band-aid, a way to avoid talking about the real issues. Sex was easier. It was a way to feel connected, to reassure themselves that they still wanted each other. But when the panting subsided and their sweaty bodies lay exhausted, the silence that followed was loud enough to blow eardrums. Sophie sighed, pushing those thoughts aside. She was determined not to dwell on her marital troubles this weekend. This was a time to celebrate Jordan's love and happiness, to hope that her sister's marriage would be filled with the kind of open communication that seemed to be lacking in her own. With a shake of her head, she turned back to the bar and signaled for another drink. She would need a few more to make it through the rest of this night. "Hi there, you're Jordan's sister, right?" One voice somehow managed to rise above the loud music, catching her attention. Sophie turned to find an older woman, dark brown hair streaked with silver, smiling at her. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Sophie." The woman extended her hand. "I'm Dante's aunt, and I think I know a sergeant when I see one. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Alma Johnson." "Lieutenant, it's an honor to meet you, ma'am." Sophie stood at attention, ready to salute. Alma chuckled. "At ease, soldier. We're at a party, not on base." Relaxing, Sophie let out a nervous laugh. "Old habits die hard. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lieutenant Colonel Johnson." "Please, call me Alma. The pleasure's all mine." The bartender slid her other drink across the counter, and Sophie took a sip. She was about to ask about the lieutenant colonel's storied military career when Alma spoke first. "Is that your wife over there?" Alma nodded towards the dance floor, where Ryan, gorgeous in a blue dress, was doing the cha-cha slide with Dante and his cousins. "Yes, ma'am, that's her." Alma studied Sophie, then glanced at Ryan knowingly. She then caught sight of Diane, Jordan's mother, whom she was introduced to earlier. Cutting daggers at the woman in the blue dress, Alma connected the dots. "You and your wife look beautiful together. I saw you two when you walked in. Such a lovely, good-looking couple." Sophie wasn't expecting that. Compliments about her same-sex relationship from someone of Alma's generation and military background were rare. Picking up on Sophie's surprise, Alma leaned closer and spoke in a reassuring, no-nonsense tone. "Love looks good on you, Sergeant. Don't let anyone tell you differently." "Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much." Alma smiled, then launched into a question about Sophie's military service. The two women sat at the bar, trading stories and experiences while the part danced and ate away. Sophie finally felt that knot in her chest loosen up after being tense the whole damn night. She may not have had her mother's approval and acceptance, which she had longed for most of her life. But the unexpected comfort was found in the words of a wise, accepting stranger. It served as a reminder that validation and support can come from unexpected places. "Oops, sorry." Ryan sidestepped a woman hurrying out of the bathroom, narrowly avoiding a collision. She caught the door before it swung shut, slipping inside. She paused, noticing Diane quietly fixing her lipstick in the mirror. Approaching the counter, she pulled her purse from her shoulder, rummaged through it, retrieved her own makeup, and began touching up her appearance. Glancing at the older woman's reflection, Ryan's lips quirked into an ironic smile. She knew Diane wouldn't initiate a conversation, so she took the lead instead. "You know, Mrs. Moore, your daughter is an incredible woman," she began randomly, yet purposefully. "Soph's got a heart of gold, smart, driven, and loyal to a fault. The way she cares for the people in her life, the way she cares for me, her wife, it's truly inspiring." Diane's facial muscles tensed, yet she continued applying her lipstick. "There was this one time I got really sick after a vacation to Europe. I'm talking the can't get out of bed, feel like death sick. Sophie, she was a rock. She stayed by my side the entire time, making sure I had everything I needed. Soup, meds, you name it. She even took time off work to take care of me. That's just who she is. Always putting others' needs before her own. Diane's hand stilled, her lipstick hanging near her mouth. She met Ryan's eyes in the mirror, but remained quiet. It's a shame you've shut her out of your life. Ryan leaned closer to the mirror as she carefully applied her eyeliner. You're missing out on knowing an amazing person. Sophie's the kind of woman who'd move mountains for the people she loves. That girl's built differently. Like, she just powers through any drama life throws her way. Having finished, Ryan finally packed up her makeup and zipped her purse. Diane's eyes narrowed, and she turned to face Rain head on. I gotta ask, dear, if Sophie is such a wonderful person, as you claim she is, then why have you two avoided each other all day? This made Ryan pause. I've been watching you two all night, and whatever you have, it doesn't look like a loving relationship to me. Her stare traveled over Ryan's tattoos in disapproval. Plus, you and Sophie don't seem to have anything in common. Mrs. Moore, let me break it down for you respectfully, Ryan said as she crossed her arms. The connection Sophie and I share, it's deeper than love. It's on a whole other level. And honestly, do you even really know your daughter? We're more alike than you might think, believe that? Diane scoffed, but Ryan wasn't done. Is my wife pissed at me today? Honestly, yes, she is. You caught us. Congratulations, but we'll be fine. Trust me. The passion and support we have for each other, nothing's breaking that. When you have true love, like the love Sophie gives me every day, differences don't stand a chance. Switching it up, her voice took on a gentler feeling, like she almost felt bad for the woman. It's a shame you can't see past your own prejudices to love Sophie for who she is, despite your differences. With that mic drop moment, Ryan turned a full 180 and exited stage left, leaving Diane standing there in astonished silence. A moment later, a toilet flushed, and Jordan appeared from a stall. She washed her hands, eyeing her mother guardedly. You're going to let her talk to your mother this way? Jordan grabbed a paper towel, groaning. Mom, please. Not today. There's nothing Ryan said that was wrong. I've been telling you this for years. Can we just not today? She tossed the crumpled towel in the bin and walked out, leaving Diane alone with her reflection staring back at her in hushed judgment. Scene 2. Ryan and Sophie dragged their feet through the crowded airport, feeling wiped from Jordan's party last night. The early morning flight had left them groggy, and they roamed the crowded terminal in their loungewear, seeking relief in the promise of caffeine. I need coffee, like yesterday. Pretty sure my brain's still snoozing in first class. Same here. Sophie stifled a yawn. Let's grab some after we hit baggage claim. With their luggage, they made their way to the nearest coffee shop. Ryan leaned against the counter, her eyes half closed, while Sophie placed their order. 2 medium black coffees, please, and 2 blueberry muffins, Sophie added, glancing at Ryan's slouched form. Make that 2 large coffees, actually. Ryan let out a tired smile. Thank you. So you and Dante's aunt, huh? Y'all seem to have a lot to talk about last night. Care to share with the class? I mean, we just clicked and swapped stories about our time in the military. I even got her number so we can catch up some more. She was really nice and welcoming. Oh, I see how it is, Ryan teased. I don't have to worry about you leaving me for an older woman now, do I? With a side eye from Sophie that said, BFFR, Ryan just chuckled to herself as she grabbed their order. They made their way outside in the taxi queue. So about that message from Luke last night, Sophie started. Looks like we've got a new mission lined up for tomorrow morning. They're not giving us much downtime lately, are they? Sophie shrugged, taking a sip of her coffee. You know how it is. Maybe they want to punish us for almost blowing the mission in the desert. Yeah, I get that. It's just, I was hoping we'd have a chance to, regroup, have some quiet time, and maybe talk. You want to talk? About what exactly? Us. What about us? Sophie had been waiting for this moment to come and to really discuss their relationship and where they stand. She'd left it up to Ryan to broach the subject when she was ready. Ryan's fingers fidgeted with the empty coffee cup. Well, I just thought... Before she could finish her sentence, a blast shook the airport. The shock waves reverberating through the terminal building. The windows shattered, spraying glass across the floor as people screamed in terror, and gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Ryan and Sophie looked around at the havoc, trying to assess the situation as smoke bulged from various points throughout the airport. What the hell is going on? Ryan shouted. I have no idea, but we need to get these people to safety. They jumped into action, weaving through the panicked, scared crowd. Ryan grabbed a young woman who had fallen, pulling her to her feet and guiding her toward the nearest exit. Sophie herded a group of terrified tourists behind an overturned kiosk, using it as a makeshift barricade. The airport had become a war zone, with luggage lying abandoned, spilling across the blood-streaked floor as people fled for their lives. Civilians ran in blind panic, seeking any form of shelter. The two of them moved like they shared a brain, not even needing full sentences to be on the same page. Quick eye contact and some hand signals were all it took for Ryan and Sophie to coordinate. By some stroke of luck, they spotted their bags wedged beneath a shot-up bench, shielded from the worst of the destruction. They ducked into a small maintenance closet and retrieved their weapons from their luggage, a perk of being undercover agents with special clearance. Luke, come in. Luke, you there? Sophie spoke into her QEC earpiece. Her voice tense but controlled. I'm here, Agent. What's going on? Luke's voice finally came through the speaker. Airport's under attack. Multiple hostiles, heavily armed. They're not your average terrorists. I can't make out their faces, but looks to be all female. Ryan reported, checking her ammo. Sophie peeked through the crack in the door. They appear to be pros, Luke. Mercenaries by the looks of it. Got it. Stay sharp and protect civilians. Backup's on the way. With a quick nod between them, Ryan and Sophie busted out of that utility room. Weapons ready? Airport security and police had engaged the mercenaries, but they were outgunned and outmatched. Soph, watch out behind you. Ryan's shout made Sophie spin on her heel, bullets grazing past her. Without missing a beat, she blasted a mercenary, dropping her like a bad habit. The ringleader had her face masked up, but Ryan's eyes were glued to her, trying to make her features out. She wore a C that looked ready to strike with every turn of her head. Those earrings... Ryan's brain was trying to connect the dots. She knew she recognized them from somewhere, but the memory was just out of reach. Despite the chaos, the leader directed her team to focus their fire on Ryan and Sophie. Another explosion swayed the terminal, sending debris flying. Ryan tackled Sophie to the ground, shielding her from a blast that seemed intentionally aimed at them. They're definitely after us. Ryan pushed herself up and dusted off her jacket. Yeah, but why? They fought their way through, taking down the women left and right. However, whenever they got close to the leader, she seemed to vanish, reappearing moments later to direct her team from a new vantage point. The couple realized they needed a new strategy. But just as quickly as it started, the gunshots faded away, replaced by an unsettling quiet over the airport. Ryan and Sophie stood there, surrounded by the aftermath, trying to catch their breath. They left. Sophie put away her weapon. They made their way toward the exit, and concurrently, An all-black SUV pulled up in front of them. The window rolled down, revealing the hard face of their boss. "Get in." Ryan and Sophie wasted no time, throwing their bags into the back and climbing into the vehicle. The second the doors closed, the driver floored the gas, tearing away from the curb and breaking every traffic law in existence. "Are you two okay?" Luke asked, craning his neck out the window to see the mess they had left behind. "Yeah, we're good," Ryan said, settling into her seat. "Thanks for the pickup." "Luke, what the hell is going on? Who were those people? Ryan and I were not prepared for that." With his attention locked on the laptop, Luke shook his head. "Still working on that, but right now, my priority is getting you two home." Ryan watched as he typed away. "What are you doing?" "Wiping your digital footprints?" Luke's eyes never left the screen. "Security cameras, cell phone footage, anything that could be used to track you. We can't take any chances." Black Bat's technology never ceased to amaze them, and they were thankful for the agency's resources and quick thinking. Sophie's cell lit up. "It's Jordan," she said, showing Ryan the phone. "What do I say?" Ryan reached for the phone. "I got this." She answered the call like it was just another Sunday. "Hey, Jor. Yeah, we saw what was happening as we pulled away from the airport. Crazy, I know. Your sister is paying our taxi driver now. We just pulled up to our house." Ryan's quick lie got smirks from Sophie and Luke, who were impressed she could improvise like that. "I'll have Soph call you when we get settled in." "Okay. Love you too." She ended the call and handed the phone back to Sophie. "Good job, Agent." Sophie squeezed her wife's hand, nodding slightly to say she appreciated how Ryan covered for them. "Again, who the fuck were those people?" Sophie asked, turning her attention back to Luke. "Looks like you were in the middle of a terrorist attack. But right now, I'm trying to uncover if it was domestic or international." "But why did it seem like they were just coming after me and Sophie?" "You think you were their targets?" Luke looked back and forth at the two agents, trying to figure out what they knew. Sophie shrugged. "It could have been because we were the only civilians shooting back." Ryan agreed, but her insides were yelling something else. She couldn't ignore the feeling that they were dead-ass the targets. Noticing their bruises and scrapes, Luke looked at them concernedly. "Do you guys need to see a doctor?" Ryan stretched, feeling the stiffness in her muscles from all the running and jumping on the hard concrete. "Nothing a nice bath can't fix." "Yeah, we're good." The SUV pulled up to Ryan and Sophie's place, tires grinding the gravel driveway. Luke looked back at them, his face showing he was proud they made it, but also relieved. "Nice job out there, you two. Could have been a hell of a mess if you hadn't stepped in." "Of course, sir. It's what we do. Is there anything we should be worried about?" "No, I believe it was merely a coincidence that you were present. This appeared to be a premeditated assault, regardless of your involvement." Even though she was beat and freaked out from the day, Ryan cracked a little smile. She had to throw in some of her trademark humor. It was just her. "So, since we were superheroes today in our sweats and all, do we still need to show up so early for our mission meeting tomorrow?" Luke looked from Ryan to Sophie, not sure whether he should chuckle or roll his eyes at her. "You can be there by 11 o'clock sharp. I'll let Stacy know to have your briefings ready." "How about noon? Don't push it, Wilder." Okay. Can't knock a girl for a quick finesse." Ryan threw her hands up in playful defeat. Sophie let out a short laugh, entertained by her wife's attempts to get out of waking up early. "Babe, let's head inside. I got your bags." Ryan smirked. "Bye, Luke. See you at noon." She quickly closed the car door and dashed towards the house, before Luke could correct her. Grabbing the bags from the trunk, Sophie just shook her head. After hitting Luke with a respectful nod, she followed her wife's lead and made her way inside. Sophie headed straight upstairs, while Ryan plopped down on the living room couch with a hefty sigh. Oscar swam in his own little world, the mayhem outside the glass lost on him. She watched, wishing she could escape the madness the same way. "You missed us, buddy." Ryan traced her index finger along his tank. "Must be nice, just swimming around, with no worries, just eating and shitting your life away." Oscar paused and seemed to regard Ryan with a curious tilt of his fishy head. "Don't give me that look, Ozzy. I know what you're thinking." She shifted on the couch, resting her elbows on her knees as she continued her one-sided conversation with the fish. Today was a real trip, let me tell you. Explosions, gunfire, mysterious snake earrings. Silent as ever, Oscar continued gliding carefree. "And don't even get me started on this whole marriage thing." Ryan's fingers absently traced the tattoo on her wrist. "I'm still learning a thing or two. It ain't easy, I tell you, but I guess that's the thing about love, right? You have to work hard at it. It's supposed to be worth it." "And I know your mom is worth it, Oz. I really do. I know we're soulmates, but..." She reached up to scratch her ear, accidentally pressing the button on her QEC. Out of nowhere, Luke's voice barked through the earpiece, making her jump. "Ryan, are you there? Did something else happen?" "What? No, everything's fine, Luke. I just accidentally turned on my earpiece while I was talking to Oscar." "Oscar? Who the hell is Oscar?" Our fish?" She questioned it like she was now unsure. There was a pause, and she could practically hear Luke's annoyance through the silence. "Right. Well, if you're done chatting with the fish, maybe you could focus on getting some rest before tomorrow's assignment." "Will do, boss." Ryan quickly tapped the earpiece to end the conversation. She looked back at Oscar. Yeah, I get it. That's my cue to go. Thanks for listening anyway, dog." Ryan pushed herself to her feet, stretching her arms above her head and cracking a few bones. She looked at the fish tank one last time before heading towards the stairs. "Maybe next time, I'll just stick to talking to myself like a normal person," she muttered under her breath, a hint of self-deprecating humor in her voice. The events of the past 24 hours had taken their toll, and all she wanted was a hot bath, clean teeth, and the sweet comfort of her bed. She pushed open the door to their master bathroom, ready to start her nighttime routine. But the sight that greeted her made her pause. Sophie was immersed up to her neck in their oversized tub, her eyes closed and a tranquil expression on her face. She also noticed that the bathroom felt really cold. Soph? Ryan's tired brain, struggling to make sense of the scene. "You do realize that's not a cold tub, right?" "Care to join me?" Yeah, leave it to her wife to voluntarily take an ice bath after the day they'd had. "Babe, I love you, but there's no way in hell I'm getting in there with you," Ryan expressed, already backing away from the tub. "I'm flexible as a noodle, remember? No need for extreme temperature therapy. Yoga is enough for me." Sophie cracked one eye open. "Don't even start with that flexible nonsense. Your achy bones could use a good soak, and you know it." Ryan was about to argue, but she had to admit Sophie made sense. Her body was sore as hell from earlier, and a long soak kind of sounded perfect right now. "Come on, Rye," Sophie coaxed. "Remember how good that ice bath felt after you cracked your ribs? It'll be just like that." "You and I have very different definitions of good, Sophie." Ryan shook at the memory, but despite her reservations, she started stripping off her clothes and cautiously lowered herself into the tub, facing Sophie from the opposite end. The icy water felt like 1,000 needles, and she let out a string of colorful curses that would have made Samuel L. Jackson blush. "Holy shit, that's cold? You couldn't have warned me?" And missed the look on your face? Nope. Ryan was trying to stay mad, but that look in Sophie's eyes gave her butterflies. It had been a minute since she'd seen her wife this chill and laid back. Gradually, her body began to adjust to the temperature, and a wave of zen flowed through her body, loosening up all the knots and kinks that had been bugging her all day. She settled deeper into the cold bath, ready to just soak it all in. "Okay, I hate to say it, but you might have been onto something with this whole freezing bath thing," Ryan admitted, leaning back against the tub. Sophie's smile turned smug. "Told you so." They fell into silence, while Ryan watched the way Sophie's chest moved up and down while she breathed, her face looking like a work of art she never wanted to stop admiring. She was still the most beautiful woman Ryan had ever laid eyes on. But there were shadows under her eyes now, new worry lines carved into her brow. Ryan's chest felt heavy with guilt, old regrets bubbling up. She had to get this out before she lost her nerve, so she just blurted the words she'd been keeping to herself. "I'm sorry, Soph. For everything." Opening her eyes, Sophie stared at Ryan with an unreadable expression. "I know you are," she replied, her voice little more than a whisper. "I'm sorry, too." Ryan didn't have a clue if this tiny peace offering could even begin to patch up the massive rift between them. But she knew she had to try. Reaching out with numb, wrinkled fingers, she tangled her hand with Sophie's beneath the water. She held on tight, hoping against hope that her wife would anchor her, tethered to this moment. Sophie didn't pull away. Her fingers tightened around Ryan's in an encouraging squeeze and the barest hint of a smile. It wasn't much, not a permanent solution to the hurt and mistrust floating between them, but it was a start. Or a restart, part 4. But who's counting? "Jordan told me about the little talk you had with my mom." Sophie broke the silence. "Thank you for that." "Of course, baby. She doesn't deserve you, your energy, or your effort. But I had to let her know what she was missing out on." With watery eyes, Sophie tipped her chin in agreement and slid up on top of her, melding their lips in a kiss so gentle it struck a chord in Ryan's soul. As they got caught up in each other, Ryan had her doubts. Were they really good? Or was this just a temporary thing before the next blow-up happened? She ignored those thoughts while they kissed softly and deeply, soaking in the water that was slowly warming up. It was a rediscovery of known dips and edges once familiar. Ryan's hand drifted to the gold chain around Sophie's neck, her fingers brushing against the ring charm that once belonged to her wife's late father. She could feel the power of the ring's significance. It was a piece of Sophie's past, a cherished remembrance of a man who had loved and supported her unconditionally. Ryan's tongue begged entry, and Sophie granted it with a muffled moan. They tasted each other, sending goosebumps all over their bodies. It was a kiss that spoke of love, of "I miss you," of "I promise to be better." Deep down, they felt that they were going to be okay. Even with all the drama, maybe they pulled through this closer than before.